Hello and welcome to this episode of Macro Sutra. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor. And now there's already been so much talk about what US President Donald Trump has done. There's been talk on tariffs, there's been talk about his attitudes towards Russia, there's been talk about what he's doing with the WTO. But there's been less talk about what he's been doing in the crypto space. And he's done actually quite a lot, or rather, his government has done quite a lot. And that's what we're going to discuss. And to a little extent, we're going to contrast that to what India has also lately been doing. To discuss all of that, we have with you Associate Professor at NIPFP, Radhika Pandey. Thank you so much, Radhika, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
So now, Radhika, as with any new technology, the regulatory framework in the US, at least up till now, was quite complex. But Trump seems to have brought in some amount of clarity. So could you walk us through some of that?
Yes, so even during his electoral campaigns, Trump had advocated that he wants to make the US the crypto capital of the world. And towards this, he had promised sweeping changes in the crypto regulatory framework. Towards the end of January, he announced the government released an executive order with the aim to promote digital technology and with the aim to bring greater clarity in crypto regulation. So let's talk about the existing crypto regulation, like you rightly pointed out, that it is complex just like in other for any emerging technology. So in the US, there are these two regulators. One is the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is
Right.
akin to our SEBI, and there is a commodities market regulator, which is the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. Now, these two regulators are jointly regulating the various aspects of crypto. Now, depending upon whether crypto or any digital asset for that matter, is it if it is a commodity, then it is regulated by the CFTC, the commodity regulator, and if it is a security, then it's regulated by the SEC. And over the course of many years, there has been this turf war going on between the two regulators because the nature of this digital assets, cryptocurrencies, crypto assets is such that sometimes it is akin to a commodity as per their definition, but at other times it can also be considered as a security.
Security.
So there
Right.
is this trouble going on between these two regulators, which was making the system very complex, and there were a string of compliances and enforcement actions against the crypto participants, the crypto exchanges, and so on. So what they decided, so primarily what is in the framework in the US is that the derivatives on cryptos are regulated by the CFTC, which is the commodities market regulator in general, whereas the initial coin offerings, which is like offering of a security,
Right.
that is regulated by the Securities Exchange Commission. So there is a test there which is called the Howey test, which defines whether any particular asset is a security or not. So if there is an investment contract involving investment of money in a common enterprise leading to the expectation of profit on the efforts of others, these four pronged criteria, then it becomes a security. So for everything, for every kind of transaction, these four this four prong test is applied, and if the test the all the four criteria are matched, then it is treated as a security, otherwise it's a commodity. Now, interestingly, Bitcoin is not treated as a security because Bitcoin doesn't involve an enterprise. Where
Right.
when we are investing in Bitcoin, there is no enterprise as such where a common set of people are investing. So Bitcoin is a commodity, it is not a security. So these were the kind of complex framework which required greater clarity, and therefore the executive order which was released on 23rd January, it seeks to bring greater clarity in the crypto framework. Towards this, they have announced that they will set up a working group to simplify and rationalize the crypto regulations going forward.
Right. And one of the big changes, policy changes in the US under Trump has also been that they've become much more welcoming towards stable coins. But at the same time, they've taken a kind of a negative stance on central bank digital currencies.
Yes, so that again is a part of the executive order. So if you read the executive order, there are 4 5 points. One is that they are very open to open source blockchain technology. They want people to undertake mining. They want to become more open to any kind of blockchain technology and this various use case application. The other thing is that, as you rightly mentioned, they have given a big boost and they have promised that they will support dollar backed stable coins. So we know that stable coins are a category of digital assets, cryptocurrencies, which are pegged to a asset and
Right.
an underlying asset. Now in this case they have explicitly stated that they are going to support dollar backed stable coins, that is those stable coins which are pegged one on one to dollar. In other words, they want to promote dollar-backed stable currency, stable coins as proxy to dollar, and they want to use it to bolster the use of dollar in international payments, in cross-border payments, in international travel, tourism, and so on. And as a matter of fact, they want to use it as an instrument to strengthen the position of dollar amid all these efforts to de-dollarize and to develop local currencies by BRICS countries and so on. So therefore, they are promoting dollar-backed stablecoin, and in parallel, they are saying that they have terminated all efforts towards central bank digital currencies, which they consider as an example of regulatory overreach and inimical to financial stability and privacy concern. They are concerned with privacy concerns, financial privacy over CBDC. So they have stopped all efforts. There is no there is going to be no effort towards developing a US CBDC, which is in contrast to what other countries are doing. In fact, yesterday, the UK released their discussion paper on digital pound. So they are now in the testing phase of CBDC. So they are going in a very different direction. The US is going in a different direction where they are promoting more of private backed stable coins rather than central bank issued digital currency.
Right. I was going to mention the CBDC point in greater detail. So India, we've done a pilot project of CBDCs at the retail and the wholesale level, and as you mentioned, there are several countries that are now increasingly toying with the idea of a central bank digital currency. But the US is going in the opposite direction. So, do you feel that this is going to slow down the global move towards CBDCs?
So in fact, if you see the trend, the progress on CBDCs, it's mostly most of the countries are just at the development phase. They are in the testing phase. We haven't seen many countries actually implementing CBDC. So as you rightly said, they are toying with this idea. They are looking at the various use cases. So as it is, even now, while there is a lot of interest in the various use cases, there's only a handful of countries that have actually gone ahead and implemented CBDC, and they have a very specific use case for CBDC, which is that they are, they are quite remotely located. So it's easier to use digital currency there or to promote financial inclusion. But in India, as we know, because we already have a very robust digital payments framework, we haven't seen that interest, and
Right.
therefore even the Reserve Bank of India has shifted its attention from retail CBDC to wholesale CBDC and developing more examples of applications of wholesale CBDC. So overall, we see even the digital pound, the paper that was released yesterday, it says that they are not in a hurry to implement CBDC. They are just looking at the various applications of the central bank digital currency.
Right. And now, in this ongoing the Parliament session, which right now is in recess, the finance minister put before Parliament a draft income tax bill, which will replace the old one that we have. Now, in this bill, there are several provisions that show that the government of India is still going cautious on cryptocurrencies and crypto assets and those who operate in this space. So, could you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, so there, yes, it is cautious, but on the positive front, at least there is some movement happening there, in the
Right.
sense that there is the definition of virtual digital assets has been expanded to
Mhm.
explicitly capture crypto. So
Right.
earlier, the definition of the income tax, the definition of VDAs, virtual digital assets, did not include crypto. It was a very general definition, which included things like non-fungible tokens, and so on. But now, with the income tax bill, amends and expands the definition of virtual digital assets to include crypto. So that is one major development that has happened. The other is that there is greater onus on the people who are operating in this space to do timely reporting. So that is again a step towards developing some kind of a regulatory framework, though it's not a very foolproof or robust framework. But yes, we are cautiously, slowly moving towards greater reporting requirements. That is the other. And the other key change that has been introduced is that, as according to Section 301, uh, crypto is now part of the undisclosed income. So that is one important thing that they have introduced. That means that during the course of any search operation, if they come to know, the authorities come to know that the person has engaged in undisclosed crypto trading, then not only for that year, for the prior 6 assessment years, investigations will be made, and the tax will be at the rate of 60%. So these are the gist of some of the important provision that they have made. And they are also talking about developing a registration framework going forward, that the
Mm.
authorities are free to set up a registration framework. So the players in this field, the participants in this field, are treating this as a step forward.
Right.
That yes, it is a very slow process, but at least we are moving in that direction of developing some kind of a framework, and at least there is some talk. And this is after the disappointment on the discussion paper, which was supposed to be released last year in September, but it wasn't released. And still people are waiting for that discussion paper, which will lay down the contours of a crypto regulatory framework in India, and will ask for stakeholder comments and so on. But in the absence of this, at least there is some movement, and the biggest step forward is that there is now a legislative definition of virtual
Mm.
digital assets, which includes crypto, and there is a reporting requirement. So at least there's going to be some kind of interaction between the persons who are the regulator and the regulated entities.
Right. So I guess up till now, it's been that the government's been cautious about even regulating in this
Correct.
space.
Yes.
So now at least it's regulating, even though there's still a lot of a compliance burden, there's high taxes,
Right.
all of that. So the government is cautious, but at least it's now willing to regulate or, have something to do with the industry. So far, it's been keeping its distance.
Right.
So now we have some questions from the audience. Aditya asks, do you think that, like how India has reacted to the Trump tariffs by reducing some of its own tariffs, can we see any positive change towards cryptocurrencies if the Trump administration promotes it as a mode of exchange and payments?
So I think our direction is completely distinct from the US
Right.
direction, and we are moving very cautiously. And in fact, the in US also there is a lot of talk about lot of far-reaching changes which need to be thought through,
Mm.
especially in an emerging market context, because they are going ahead with something called Bitcoin Strategic Reserve
Reserve.
Fund.
Yes.
So whether that is something that is a welcome proposition in India or not, all these things need to be thought through. But first and foremost, what is needed is to have a regulatory framework. And by now we are all well aware of what are the important dimensions of a crypto regulatory framework. We need some agency to register the crypto platforms. We need some agency for consumer protection, for prudential regulations, for custodial requirement. So by now the dimensions of crypto regulations, at least the contours, are quite clear. So I think the first step needs to be to develop a regulatory framework. US is far ahead of us because they have a framework now. it is complex. They want to rectify that, but our journey is, our first step is to have a regulatory framework in the first place. Some steps have been taken in the form of having a more expanded definition of VDA, but that's a very small step, and we need to move much forward in this direction.
Right. And Gautam asks, in relation to this crypto reserve that you were talking about, how practical are Trump's talks about adding Bitcoin to the US strategic reserve? And if this is done, what could be the potential impact on the world economy? And would it push India too to rejig its foreign exchange reserve composition?
Yeah, a very interesting question, because uh, during his electoral promises, Trump did talk about developing a strategic fund on Bitcoin. And there are many countries like the US, the UAE, these countries are having a Bitcoin strategic reserve fund. And in the US, they have something called a petroleum strategic fund, they have gold fund. So the thing that are considered as short in supply, they do have these funds to tide over periods of crisis. Now, how far the Bitcoin strategic fund will go, that is something that needs to be seen, because in various states they have introduced this bill to set up this Bitcoin fund, but till now it hasn't received acceptance, because there are the people who are against this idea. They say that you are using taxpayer money to build this fund, you are using the US Federal Reserve dividends and profits to build this fund. And of course, the usual arguments against crypto, that they are volatile in nature, they do not have an inherent value, that still prevails. Because notably, even once the executive order came into place, the Bitcoin prices crashed.
Actually, yeah.
Crashed.
Yes.
So Bitcoin prices were rising in the run up to the executive order, and after that, the prices crashed, because there was expectation that more would be done on Bitcoin strategic reserve fund. The working group that has been set up as part of the executive order does talk about exploring the idea, but it is something which is still which will require careful examination of the various ways in which it will be developed and how it will be used and what will be its utility going forward. So all these things are something that will take their time. So it's not something that will happen, because there is, in the US also, there is section of population, people who are completely opposed to this idea. So it's not something that will have a smooth sailing going forward. And the same applies to India about rejigging foreign exchange reserves composition.
We've been so wary about this. I don't think there's any chance of us suddenly putting cryptos in our forex reserves.
Particularly, RBI has been vehemently opposed
Yeah.
to the idea of crypto, and they are positioning CBDC as a alternative to crypto, which is of course debatable. So we don't think that there is any chance of the rejig happening in favor of crypto. We are seeing some rejig happening in favor of gold, because that is something that is happening, that most of the central banks are increasing their share of gold, and that happens every time there is an uncertain environment, that the proportion of gold in the forex reserves goes up. Globally, that's happening, and Indian central bank is also not an exception to this. But beyond that, I think things are moving very slowly, and we don't see any chance of a rejig.
Right. And in fact, if you want to see what's been happening with central banks and gold, Mr. Shekhar Gupta recently, just a few days ago, did a Cut the Clutter episode on it, and he's gone into it in quite a lot of detail. So you should check that out. But on that note, that's all we have for you on the crypto space. In the US, there's been a lot of changes that have been happening. There's policy clarity that's starting to come in regarding cryptos. Donald Trump is very much in favor of them, especially the private cryptos and the stable coins. He's not in favor of central bank digital currencies. And now, this entire thing playing out is in contrast to what's happening in India, where the government continues to be quite cautious about cryptocurrencies and virtual digital assets, where you have to pay still quite a high tax on it. And there's a lot of compliance that entities have to regularly report transactions and turnovers and things like that to the government. But the good news is that the new draft income tax bill has at least codified several of these compliances and definitions. So that's a step forward. But on that note, that's all we have for you. Thank you so much for watching.